I, Philip Joseph here.
I would like to be judged as being the Prime Minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
Came into government that we had a manifesto and a vision and mission that had been approved by my party, by the highest body.
Bastard 11 has not been in existence. 50 was...
Giant getting bazooka. You spraying big on to knock out mosquitoes.
I have never had a joint account with anybody in my life. Not my ex-wife, not my children, nobody. And I will refer that to the Privileges Committee.
What about the culture of people getting to office and not being effective in terms
What people become Prime Minister of Lucia have been the most ready.
Let's do it this Wednesday, because if it's Wednesday, it's NewsMaker Live. Very good evening to you. Welcome to another edition of NewsMaker Live right here on DBS television with me, Timothy Poleon. We go up until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we conclude with the clip that peaked. In a moment, I'll be introducing my special guest to you. On this evening's broadcast, we'll be focusing on youth-related issues because there are so many things that are happening in St. Lucia right now, and particularly areas of concern relating to youth violence, the crime, and also the fact that most of our homicide victims are young people between the ages of 21 and 30, and most of the perpetrators as well are young men. So we also have to continue to revel on the achievement of a young woman, and that is Alfred winning the 100 meters and also the 200 meters at the Paris Olympics, and bringing a lot of joy and pride to us, and recently visiting St. Lucia. And certainly many of you would have gone to the various activities celebrating this young lady, Julian Alfred. And we're focusing as well on the youth movement on the island, in particular the National Youth Council. My guest this evening is a former president of the NYC. He is Jeshurun Andrew. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Very much.
I think that's just about your third appearance on this program.
Yes, I think it's my third time here. Yes, indeed.
Let's focus on the elephant in the room, and that is crime, and the fact that most of the perpetrators and the victims are young people. How much of an issue is that to you as a former president of the NYC, a former youth leader in St. Lucia?
Well, Tim, I think the issue is one which is very serious, at this time. The situation is dire, and I think young persons around the island have been affected in one way or another by this crime situation. We have mothers losing their children, their sons. We have children being left fatherless, motherless due to this crime situation. And I think that as a nation, there is so much that we need to do moving forward to really address this issue.
What do you think should be done?
Well, Tim, I think solutions to crime, you need a very multifaceted approach to resolve it. You will never entirely be able to deal with the crime situation in its entirety. But there are things that I think that can be done to, remedy the situation. I think we need a few more deterrents to be put in place. I think.
And that will include what?
I think sports plays a very important role moving forward in how we're able to really reach those young persons, those young guys, and engage them at the community level. I think also, the unemployment is a part of it, but it is not the only thing contributing to the crime. I think conflict resolution is a huge part of it. I think recently we heard of a situation where several guys lost their lives, and it stemmed from a situation over an argument for a cap. So when you have situations like that, you realize that the crime situation is very entrenched in the young people, and young people have to understand that violence is not the only way to address their problems or their situations. I think we have a lot to do as it pertains to fighting the battle when it comes to guns and ammunition. I mean, in St. Lucia, we have no factories, producing those things, items, guns and weapons of the sort. So it has to be coming through our ports. A lot has to be done as it pertains to our port of entry and how we're able to surveillance our ports. I think we need more drone footage, drones available for the police, for the marine police, who are trying their utmost best at the moment to deal with monitoring our ports. There was the idea of the border control, and I think it's important that we really look at that as a solution, as a nation. You hear persons speaking about the fact that maybe the customs officers might be working, with some of the persons who are trying to beat the system in terms of getting things in. And, I think there are things that can be done to address that issue. So, for example, I have had an idea where, as a nation, or as a region, rather, we can come together, CARICOM, and pool our customs officers. And those customs officers move from country to country. So an officer does 3 months on an island, in an island, and moves to another place. They moves to another place. So you don't keep them in a space long enough for them to build relationships that can affect their integrity working within the space. And so there are certain things that we can do, certain measures that we can put in place to create an environment that makes it a little more difficult for these items to come through our ports and to get into the country. I really think, as a nation, to really be able to administer sports in the way that we need to, as a deterrent to combat the crime, we have to look at the issue of the fact that in communities now, there is a breakdown in the structure as it pertains to community organizations. Volunteerism is dying. So as a result of that, we have to find ways in which to reverse what is happening currently. I think that we need to find a way to add value to persons' volunteerism time. So if we come together, the business community, public service, and we decide as a unit that we are going to start having an importance, or place an emphasis on the importance of young people having community service as part of their requirements, or as what employers look at to become employed, then I think you can actually have the reverse effect, where you, as a young person, you've gone to 2, 3, and 4 interviews, and persons are starting to ask you, what have you done in the community? What group have you been a part of? Where have you served? Then those young people start to go back into the community, get involved in the groups. You can have those groups flourishing again. And then now, through those groups, you can start having programs, diversion programs, to get some of those young boys, some of those young women into those spaces where they can function. And you can, administer a lot of the programs and initiatives that you would like to.
But it appears that in this country, we are professionals when it comes to identifying problems and talking about them. Because I'm sure on the 2 previous occasions you have been on this broadcast, NewsMaker Live, that we would have spoken about those same issues, those same concerns, and probably, if you go through the tapes, you would have made maybe those same recommendations.
Similar, right?
Why do you think that we have a knack for not wanting to work assiduously towards resolving issues, preventing them from worsening or reaching a point that is unmanageable, such as crime? Because it would have started one day with us having 5 homicides and maybe 10 another year, and then 15, and people raising hell in the country and talking about it, not many talk shows, but whispering and so on, to now we are in the month of October at 62. So definitely there seems to have been a dereliction of duty over an extended period of time, where we ignored our roles and our responsibilities from the home, from the community, from the government, from various interest groups, and at the individual level as well. Why do you think that's the case?
I think sometimes, Tim, as the old saying goes, too many cooks spoil the broth. So sometimes you have so many different persons with their own perspective as to what the solutions should be. You may have a breakdown or difficulties in coming together and really collectively agreeing upon an approach. I heard recently that the newly appointed police commissioner may have some plan to help address the crime situation. So, I'm waiting from that perspective to hear from him from that level, as to what some of those plans, what some of those initiatives are, how it's going to roll out, and how it's going to actually effectively work towards addressing the problem. So I think it's really, really important for the leaders in the spaces to come forward with the solutions, stand by it, and ensure that they're executed.
But from the perspective of the youth and young people, the fact that they are mainly seen as perpetrators, and the evidence is showing perpetrators and also the victims. Where is, you think, there isn't an outcry? There isn't this demonstration of concern coming from responsible young people in St. Lucia, and that would include the National Youth Council. Why do you think that this is the case?
Well, I think the National Youth Council can play a stronger role in terms of advocacy on the issue. I know that internally they have been working with USAID to try to roll out a few programs in the communities to address the crime situation. The information that I have currently suggests that there are consultations going on at the moment with persons from USAID and the NYC to work towards creating some of those programs and initiatives that's required at this time to address the issue. I think, like you said, they can play a stronger role in terms of advocating and getting more of corporate St. Lucia to come on board and to be part of the movement and to help them develop those plans and initiatives that are coming on stream at this time.
But in terms of the role that should be played by everyone in the society, don't you think that the young people can do a lot better in ensuring that those who are responsible for our safety in this country do what is required of them? Because in the main, they are not even adults. They are senior citizens. And the main responsibility, generally speaking, to fight crime, to address those issues, are not being given to young people. The young people are the ones playing the leading roles in law enforcement. How do you think that young people can be embraced so that they can be a part of the solution as well to fight this problem?
I think we need to, one of the things we can do, Tim, is to massage the disconnect between the average young man and the police. I think we need to find ways to improve the relationship, improve the trust that happens between the two in both directions. I mean, if you go on the block and you have conversation with the average young person, their willingness to report something that was done to them is very low. They rather try to resolve it on their own, take their own measures to address whatever situation it might be, and that may be coming from a space of what's expected of them among peers at the street level, so that needs to be looked at. And the police, how they interact, you hear persons say that they don't trust providing information to the police because sometimes it gets out that they may be the ones who gave that information, provided that information to the police officers. And we have very good police officers in the force. I can attest to that. I know many police officers who really try their best to work with the young people in the community, and they go out and they try to engage young men and try to have programs and discussions where they can understand and better relate to their situation and so better serve them. But I think a lot needs to be done in terms of how we're able to bridge that disconnect between the two. And that's one of the major things I think we can look into.
Are you able to speak to the plight of young men in St. Lucia at this point in time? When, for example, you had the police giving the statistics of most of the homicide victims are between the ages of 21 and 30. And you would interact a lot over the years with young men, young women. I mean, what, amidst all that, what would still embolden young men to continue to live a life of crime, knowing that there is the possibility that they can become the victim based on the life that they're living?
You know, I think, Tim, for some of them it's the life they know. Some of them think that that is the opportunity that they've created for themselves. And what has happened in a few cases, you would have a young man who gets himself into trouble with other groups of young men, and you would hear that, you know, they're looking for him, or that person is wanted by whoever else. And, you know, some of them go into hiding, and you know, you ask yourself, you know, when does the hiding stop? How can I get out? How can I ever... There was a community that I went into recently, and I saw a young man there who I thought was overseas. I had not seen him for about 8 or 9 years, and he simply told me, bro, I cannot live here. If I leave this space and I go out anywhere, and any of my enemies or persons who are looking for me realize that I'm here, I'm on island, you know, that's it for me. You know, so for some of them, the moment you get in, you know, you're stuck. You have persons who are in crime based on their inability to report their grievances. Their grievances might be drug or gun based, and it's not something you can report to the police. You try to sell drugs to somebody, the person shortchange you or something of the sort, and you end up in a difficult situation. You cannot, or they find that they cannot report something of the sort to the authorities. So there's a lot of street justice, I would call it, that's happening in those cases. And you know, some of those young persons, once you get into the space, the drug space, the gang violence space, there's not often a way out, you know, and then you hear the stories trickling down. So this person did whatever to my cousin, to my uncle, and it is almost like it trickles down the generations to their children, to their this, to their that. And you know, it's like a never-ending battle, and something needs to be done to remove one of those clogs in the wheel to get it to stop.
But the point is, how do we do that, and where do we start? Because obviously the statistics, the evidence would show that the situation is just worsening, and there isn't any glimmer of hope, because nearly every other day you hear of persons being shot, killed, injured, and increasingly the victims are young people, very young people. I mean, the other situation just recently, a 13-year-old male was killed in his home. Now we hear, and I don't know the circumstances, reports of a 6-year-old girl, a child.
I think a few nights ago.
Yes, last evening, being shot in the mouth. And I mean, if you have that kind of trauma, people are being impacted to that extent. Obviously, it seems that we are overwhelmed. And we are lost as far as finding solutions or knowing where to start. And I just wondering whether the answers reside in the young people themselves as opposed to the older people.
Well, I agree with you. The young people need to lead the charge team, but at the end of the day, we need to be able to put in the programs, the initiatives to resolve the situation, like I was saying earlier. I think, you know, the criminals or those persons who are engaged in crime need to feel that they can be caught. You hear a lot of persons saying, I'll do that, I'll not get caught. And rather than trying to hide what they did, persons go out on the street and boast about what they did. So our judiciary system, you know, needs to be improved in terms of how many cases we're able to solve, and probably put in stricter penalties so persons can see that, you know, it's really serious. I think the CCTV program that was coming on stream is something that we can really look into and take very seriously, ensure we have it, you know, set up in as many of the hot spots as possible and other places as well. Combined with some of what I mentioned earlier, I think would be very important to help combating the crime. Preventative is also very important. We need to go into the schools, probably deal with the younger ones, and have programs that inspire them not to get into those spaces in the first place. I think to Tim, the average young person maybe who doesn't feel welcome at home may feel a sense of inclusion or involvement or a sense of acceptance in a gang space, in a setting. So socially, there is this, combined with the music and what they're listening to right now, it really drives them into those spaces, and they're attracted to it. And so you find, if we are now able to create other social spaces where those young persons can get into and feel liked, feel welcomed, feel at home, which goes back to the community groups, community organizations, which is dying, I think we can really start to develop a preventative approach to dealing with the crime. Some of those younger persons as well, like I said earlier, conflict resolution is something we really need to look into at the school level, to do drills, to have programs, to have initiatives to address that issue, and to really reach out to those young persons and to let them know that that sort of life, there is no future in it. Really get and reach out to it. I think there are a few police officers around who try from time to time to go to the schools, to speak to the students, to mentor them. I know there are young people as well who are doing some peer helpers sort of initiatives, where this big brother, little brother type structure is set up in a few of the communities, and they're able to speak to some of the troubled young guys and try to put them on the right path. So there's a bit of that going on, but it needs to happen more directly and more aggressively to be able to really have the effect that we would want to see.
But if it's not tackled from that particular perspective, what do you envisage could happen in the long run with so many children being fatherless, and also so many women were just there, not having, not being in a position to have a partner, because again, the homicide, most of them, the victims are between the age of 21 and 30. How do we ensure that systematically we try our utmost to identify those children who need the kind of counseling that is required? Because in most instances, or some instances, they're going through the education system. We could channel our energies in that particular area. At the community level, those people are identified as well. But when you do not have the personnel, you don't have the resources, such as, let's say, a truancy officer. I think at one time we had two. We only have about one.
I think it's one.
Right now for the entire of St. Lucia. I mean, what kind of message are we sending out as far as those issues are concerned? Have we reached the point where we can say that we basically have reached the zenith in terms of our situation in St. Lucia?
I don't think so, Tim. I think if we are to really stop and take a holistic view at the situation, at what is happening, and tackle it at the various points specifically, and we are able to really execute what is required at the community level, at the grassroots level, we can have an impact and make some improvement as it pertains to the crime situation. Now,
young people, and the fact that sometimes they need some form of encouragement. They need something to boost them. The role models. What are the role models that we have in St. Lucia that the young people can emulate them, can look up to them?
In St. Lucia, I think the young people now, I seldom hear young persons looking for role models. I think what has happened with the achievements of Julian, she may actually now start to serve as a role model to a lot of the younger kids, especially those at the primary level and secondary school level, and more so those who have aspirations as it pertains to sports. I think she would really be serving right now as a role model to a lot of them. And I've actually met a few young persons who have said to me, they wish they could have a one-on-one with her so that she can, just basically tell them face to face what her journey has been like and how it has been for her, and just share with them what it's been like, so that they now can move into a space where they're able to emulate and to push and to achieve like she's done.
But she's only one person.
She's only one person. Like I'm saying, I seldom see or hear of young persons now actually looking up to role models. I think the music is playing the biggest role in terms of young people and who they look up to and what they follow. The music artists, I think, is really what is at play right now. I'm not too sure how that can be changed, but role models, I do hear that coming from the average young person right now.
Do we know what we have from your perspective and interacting with young people? Do you know what we have in Julian Alfred?
Yes, I think so. I think the young people are very aware of her achievement, how great it is, how excellent it is, and a lot of them who probably doubted themselves would now believe that they can actually reach that level, they can actually achieve something. A few years ago, I had an inter-preschool sports competition that I held in the Corinth area. I felt that not enough was being done as it pertains to exposing sports to the children from that age, which is where I think it needs to be, it needs to start. And they were at that event. I'm talking about 3 to 5 year olds. Maybe a few of them were 6. We were actually able to pull out talent from persons who participated in that event. And one of those young girls, I saw her recently. She ran very well on that day, and she continued to run very well. And she said to me that what Julian has done is really encouraging her to push herself as it pertains to her ability to run and to perform at that level, and to help her aspire to achieve more. So I think St. Lucians, the young people, really do understand and appreciate what we have in Julian Alfred.
How can we capitalize on this gem that we have in Julian Alfred? Because I mean, this is what is in style right now, Julian Alfred. She came here recently and we celebrated her. A few months from now, knowing us, our tendency in St. Lucia, do you think that we'll just forget about
like it might
the
die
achievement?
out?
Yeah.
I think if we are to take prompt measures to put benefits into place from the achievement, we can benefit from it. So let me explain further. So for example, we had a young man, Mr. Joseph, who also took part in the swimming. I think right now we need to ensure that there is a proper program in place that can help him improve, so that when he gets to the next Olympics, that he can do better than this time. And whatever program that's created for him, I think should be allowed to benefit other swimmers and other persons in the space, so that their talent can also be improved and addressed. So what Julian has done, and the domino effect in terms of developing sports and developing the spaces where other young persons can develop their talent, I think we need to harness that as quickly as possible, and put the necessary programs in place to get those young persons into better programs. I think we have a few excellent tennis players. Table tennis, Amani, who is from my community in Piat, he travels all over representing St. Lucia. He might just be 13 or 14 right now, and he's doing very well, and there are other persons in other sporting disciplines who are doing very well. I think we need to capitalize on that at this moment and ensure that we're able to develop the other spaces.
How do you think that will encourage the adult population to provide the necessary support to the young people, particularly children? Because you see, a lot of you have the mindset that what's in it for you? I mean, the suggestion then was you can't make money out of sports. Cricket, football, you just get injured and then the authorities will not help in your recuperation and so on. Do you think that will change the mindset of adults, persons will see sports as something that will not change your life, that will not bring some kind of livelihood. You cannot utilize it, as some kind of livelihood, as opposed to being a professional, a doctor, a lawyer, etc.
Right, and you make a good point, Tim. So, I mean, a few years ago, I represented St. Lucia at a Commonwealth Forum in Uganda, and one of the points that they made when it comes to sports and sports development is that if the immediate society is not one where sports is part of the culture, it's not part of the people, it's not a thing to them, then you have difficulties in developing it because the interest, the support in the background is not present. And I think in St. Lucia, this opportunity can actually be used, what Julian has done can actually be used to improve on the sporting culture of our general populace, the parents, the teachers, corporate society, and have them more interested in it, see it as a way of developing our young people, see it as an opportunity for our young people to get scholarships, to go out and study and to further themselves, and probably find ways in which the young people who are in those sports, that their engagement now can keep them off the streets, like we were saying earlier.
Let me give you an opportunity to drink some water while I pose my other question.
No problem.
It has to do with the education system in St. Lucia. And there's been so much talk about revamping the education system. It has been going on, this talk has been going on for decades now. I don't know if you're in a position to answer this. Maybe the NYC has had discussions on this particular issue when you were at the helm. Why do you think there's this reluctance or this inability to effect the kind of changes that are required so that you prepare people for the 21st century with AI and with all the technology, with all the challenges that people will continue to experience on a daily basis, and giving them the tools so that they can make the requisite adjustments so that they could survive?
Yeah, Tim, and you raise a very important issue. The education system, which currently exists in St. Lucia, needs to be modified to be able to prepare us for the 21st century. And I think a lot of things are plaguing the system at this moment. And I think, at the helm, we need persons probably who understand better what those recommendations mean. So, for example, one of the things I've always said, I think we've created a bad stigma surrounding technical vocational skills. So it is almost like the students who do not do well academically are then pushed into that space, which is not a good point. We've not been selling it right. So I think, we really need to look at, how we are going to address that issue, and let young people appreciate that there's actually a career, there's actually space for them to go into the technical vocational skills and to thrive and to become successful persons, in society. I think we need to modify our school curriculum. Like you said, the world is becoming very technological, and we need a curriculum that can serve the young people who are getting into those spaces. Even when you take into consideration, I give you a good example, the vehicles coming in now and the technologies that is put into it. What are we putting in place for our mechanics on island to be able to improve and be able to now service those vehicles that are coming in with technologies that may be foreign to them? Very soon a lot of them may not be able to do what's required, and so we need to be able to look at that. I think our education system also, it does not prepare the average young person for life living. In Form 5, I think we need to expose our children to insurance, why it's important. Parenting, that can be something that can be looked into. Taxes, why you need to file your taxes, and the importance of it. The average young person to know the basic things about vehicular maintenance. A lot of these things need to be fit into the curriculum so that our young people are better able to serve as citizens coming out of school. The discussion about e-books has been around for quite some time. And when you look at the situation, especially as it pertains to a lot of the persons who cannot afford to buy all of those books, the bags and etc. to send the children to school, I think it's the right direction for us to go in. I think I've been hearing the discussion about the e-books from since 2017 or 18. I think I would have heard it for the first time, so I think we really need to push and go in that direction. I'm hearing some talk and some buzz about it right now. I'm hoping that it's something, that gets off the ground. But it is really something that needs to be done, needs to happen.
Why don't you think we don't have the drive to address those issues? And again, it boils down to what I said earlier on about identifying problems, even coming up with the solutions, but not implementing it. We have an implementation deficit when it comes to those things. As far as the changing of the curriculum, revising the curriculum, I think most people have agreed that this is necessary. Why do you think there's this seeming reluctance and maybe it's inability to effect the changes that are required?
Maybe it might be human capacity, Tim. Maybe at the level where it needs to acquire, needs to be achieved, we don't have persons who have the capacity to deliver, to effect those changes.
Okay, but generally, don't you think that we just don't understand what it is to be radical in our approach, to do things that will create a positive change? And I know that we too often, we abuse this reference to Singapore and Singapore and Singapore. But Singapore has demonstrated that you need to take serious and critical decisions that will effect the kind of changes that you want, that would certainly impact the lives of the citizens in a positive manner. Again, why do we continue to say there's need to reform the education system, dating back to several decades now, and not doing anything about it? What do you think is the role of young people in such a regard? Because those are the things that will impact more than any demographic, the young people of a country.
Well, I think the young people now, Tim, need to get into the spaces where we can probably execute that change. We can roll it out. We can be part of the process to ensure that it's executed. The young people now are the ones that it will impact. They are the ones that understand it better. So I think the opportunity now for them to get into those spaces where they can come with the fresh ideas and actually push to execute a lot of what needs to be done might be the way to get it done.
But how do you do that? Do you think that more young people should want to put themselves in leadership positions? And sometimes it's very difficult to do that because, take for example, the public service. Somebody has retired from the public service, but yet still they are brought back.
Right.
And in certain instances, they are brought back as consultants.
Right.
So it's difficult for young people to penetrate and to find themselves in leadership positions to effect the kind of change that is required. So and therefore, young people, what do you think they should do?
And Tim, even sometimes, we have young people who are inspired and encouraged to push themselves and put themselves up to be in those spaces to effect the change, and sometimes you get some pushback, and as young people, we need to have the backbone, the strength to continue, pushing on and to ensure that we get ourselves into those spaces. In addition to that, Tim, I also think that, we need to probably bridge the gap between some of the older persons and the younger persons in terms of their understanding of systems and networks and how things work. You would go out, for example, and you might meet a farmer, I'll give you an example, who has been doing something one way for 20 years and in his or her mind it works and it will continue to work, and they have a hard time understanding you as a younger person, advising on a new methodology, advising on a new approach, that it can actually improve on their production. So, you know, sometimes
And
it might be...
I guess you're speaking from experience as an agricultural extension officer as well?
Yes, I am. You know, so in situations like that, I would have had to actually say to the farmer, okay, listen, you have 20 beds. Do 19 with your technique and 1 with mine. And let us see the difference. You know, and I think it's only then they're able to appreciate what you're selling, what you're bringing to the table as a young person. So sometimes, you know, it might be the fact that the persons who are already at the helm believe that it can continue working, that it has worked, and they don't see issues with it, and you know, that creates the reluctance to you know, implement the change that's required.
What about, for example, specifically more young people putting themselves up to be in leadership positions? Let's say elective politics. Why do you think that young people are not so interested in politics, either to go up to contest an election or to vote, to be an elector?
I think we have I've seen quite a few young persons over the past few months, from what I'm hearing on the ground, that quite a few young persons have put themselves forward to take part in elective politics. It's very encouraging, actually. I have not noticed, you know, such an influx of young people in the past, and I think that many young persons as well. You mentioned voting. Many young persons, they want to vote for somebody that they can relate to, somebody that they think they can speak to easily, somebody who, when they sit on the block and call you to have a conversation, there's no problem and you can understand and relate directly to what it is that they're saying. So I think, you know, with the young people now coming forward and putting themselves up for those leadership positions, once they're able to get in, then you will get their peers and other persons, you know, coming in and providing that sort of support. But we do need young persons, team, right now, infiltrating the leadership space, the leadership environment in this country, and working towards executing and implementing the required change, what's necessary to develop so many of the sectors, to address crime, to address education, and so many other areas.
Do you see yourself doing that?
Well, I mean, in the community, many persons who I speak to and deal with on a regular basis, you know, have suggested it to me. And I think over the years, my passion, community development, sports, agriculture, I think if given the opportunity, it will be a very interesting opportunity to be able to do more, you know, in the community. And, you know, it will be something that will be very exciting, and I mean, to work with other young persons within the space to contribute at that level, at the policy level, you know, I think that would be, you know, an interesting opportunity.
But one thing about having a quota system whereby more young people can take part in elective politics, and even not apart from elective politics, more young people can be given leadership positions. Let's say, for example, to serve on our statutory boards, our statutory corporations, and so on, and to be given the experience as opposed to just being pigeonholed, being stored somewhere, and from time to time you have this form of tokenism where we have one young person and then we it is highlighted, it is stressed upon, you see, we're interested in young people and so on, but it's basically a drop in the bucket.
Right. And I agree with you, Tim. I have always been someone to support the fact that we should have more young persons in all of the spaces. I mean, in the Senate, we should have, I think we're supposed to have 2 independent senators. I think there's no reason why one of those 2 cannot be a young person from maybe from the NYC or from some group. So when you have them as an independent senator, then they're not attached to any political party. That should work pretty well. Maybe the president or somebody within the NYC is elected and opted to serve in that capacity. At the parliamentary level, I think also it's very good for a political party to have young people going up as candidates, young people serving within the spaces, serving on boards, serving within statutory spaces, and showing their face and actually working and contributing to the decisions at all levels and to allow for their voices to be heard. It needs, though, to be young people who are really connected on the ground, young people who understand other young persons, and who really have an interest and a desire to serve and to represent their peers at that level, and not just somebody who's coming into the space for name or for title. So once we're able to get the right young persons, I think it's very important, and it will speak to all young persons to let them know that their thoughts, their feelings, their ideas are taken into consideration seriously, and that it's not just tokenism.
What do you think about the fact that young people are put under tremendous pressure to deliver once they are given the opportunity? So the chances of failing ought to be slim for any young person, because otherwise young people will be stigmatized. I told you that the young person is lazy. I told you that they don't take the initiative. They don't have the experience. I mean, they don't have the know-how, and they don't want to push themselves and so on. What do you think about the stigmatization of young people in this country? Because you have a tendency, the possibility or the evidence does show that one or two young people are stragglers. One or two young people are also involved in crime and are the victims as well.
I think that stigma is false. It falsely represents the larger section, cross-section of young persons. I think we have very hardworking young people in all areas, all sections of society, no matter their background, their strength, their passion. We have young persons serving on several organizations, functioning organizations throughout the length and breadth, of this island. And I think it's important for any organization. So you have a political party or any organization with older persons, there should be a proper succession plan. You will not be there forever. You have to bring in young persons, and the deliberate bringing in and inclusion of those young persons would ensure that you train them, you ensure that they understand what's required of them, they're prepared. There's this hand-holding where you take them through. So you don't just drop them in the ocean, and when they start to drink water, then you blame them for drinking water. I think, you need to put the systems in place as part of your succession planning to support young persons coming into your leadership space or to any space where they want to function.
As far as you know, what's up with the National Youth Council? Because I get the impression that they are in a comatose state. You hardly hear about the NYC. They hardly issue any statement on any youth-related issue in the country. So they basically seem to be non-existent and also lacking the influence and taking the opportunity to have an input in terms of ensuring that the powers that be, those people who are in leadership position, understand that those are the various issues that are of importance to the young people in the country.
Right. I think what has happened with this current executive, coming out of a difficult space the organization had before, they focused a lot on internal rebuilding, rebuilding relationships, programming as well. I think they could have done a bit more as it pertains to advocacy, and I think it is something that they can look into moving forward. But they are doing programs and initiatives like the council would do normally. I can give an example. I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, they actually had an initiative in Soufre that I attended, and they brought stakeholders and young persons to a space, and they had a very good discussion on crime and violence, entrepreneurship and other things, affecting young persons, and they would have put together a small document with an action plan with ideas and things that they can execute in the various communities. Also, I mentioned earlier that I know they're working with USAID right now through the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports to put certain projects and programs in place to tackle again the crime issue. I know there's training happening at the community level, so they are doing a few things, but I think what they need to work on currently is advocacy, to give them more visibility and to allow for their voices to be heard and their perspectives to be understood by the authorities.
What we'll do right now is to put the telephone number on screen so that you can call with your questions and the comments for my guest. Once again, he is Jeshuran Andrew, former president of the National Youth Council, and is also an agricultural extension officer. So we'll take your calls right now with regard to your questions and your comments. Mr. Andrew, still on the National Youth Council, the level of support has been given to it by the state, subvention. I think we have a call, so I'll return to that question in just a moment. Good evening to you. This is NewsMaker Live. You're on the air. Hello? Okay, well, that's a call. But in terms of the level of support that's given to the National Youth Council and you being a former president, in terms of the subvention, what do you think about the level of financial support to carry out his work?
I don't think it's enough, Tim.
My apologies to you. Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air. Hello, good evening to you, caller.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, good evening to you, sir.
Yes, I have a quick question for Mr. Andrew.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, I wanted to ask Mr. Andrew, you spoke about a lot of community development, you spoke about community interaction. I wanted to know some of the initiatives that you have taken in your community or island-wide that has benefited the young people.
All right, thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you for that question, caller. Well, I can mention two initiatives that I would have done in my community. I'm not too sure if you would remember, but a few years ago we had a serious suicide problem as it pertains to young people, and I would have stepped into the leadership space just a few months prior to that taking place. And what I would have done, I would have engaged the persons with the actual expertise in the field, and I would have engaged young persons in the community, and we had a suicide awareness campaign that was rolled out.
Hold that point, we have a call. Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Community.
Hello, good evening to you, caller. You're on the air.
Hello, good evening, Mr.
Good evening to you, caller.
Good evening. Good evening.
And to your guests. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear, caller.
Yes. I like some of the views that your young guests have explained. But one thing that I think that is needed is I would just like to say our parliamentarians do not show example for our young people because they look up to them, and I can't see anybody there that I would want my child to be a role model. And there are lots of role models in this island. There are young doctors, there are young nurses, there are young teachers that are doing sterling jobs. What I would like to put forward to Mr. Henry,
Mr.
that
Andrew.
he did not mention the church, that they, because I know of one particular church, the Methodist Church. I will mention the Methodist Church, who have gone into, I would think, is Wilton Yard, and that minister had very good relationship with some of the guides there, and they were doing excellent work, or she was doing excellent work with them. And I think the parents on a Sunday morning will have to get up with their children and take them to church and to Sunday school and let them learn about God. I don't think we're supposed to be a Christian country, and we don't see a lot of young people coming out to church. And within the church, there are a lot of clubs. I know in my church there was a club that the young people and a lot of gain experience, and they have the buddy system, as your guest had mentioned, and they mentor these children or these young people, and that's my contribution.
Okay, ma'am, thank you so much. What's you?
Yes, I agree with this caller very much. I think the church has a very important role to play in communities. It has over the years, but I think there needs to be an improvement and to have more of the churches involved in community.
You have a call. Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, good night. Just want to say, Mr. Andrew, that I'm really impressed with the information that you said tonight to answer your question. But I have one question for you, sir. As a young man myself, how do you see young leaders like yourself play? What role do you see yourself playing in shaping the country at the right moment?
Thank you so much for calling.
Well, I think young leaders like myself, like I was saying earlier, we have a very important role to play as it pertains to steering our country forward. I think the fresh ideas that are required at this time to make the necessary changes and to be able to modify some of the systems that currently exist will be coming from young persons, young leaders.
Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live. You're on the air.
Good night, Tim.
Good evening to you, caller.
Good night, Mr. Andrew.
Good night.
Yeah, so I must say, one of the things I noticed, the first caller, he asked a question, and I think you took the second call prematurely.
Yes.
But I just wanted to add to the discussion this evening, and I give kudos to Mr. Andrew because he is someone who, I don't know him personally, but I follow him, and I can vouch that he is doing a lot of work in terms of helping the young people in his community and really adding to the whole advocacy and stuff. And one thing I wanted to add to the discussion would be, young people get into elective politics as well as the organizations in wider society. Oftentimes, young people do face the challenge of being, I don't want to say victimized, but more or less getting a lot of undue pressure from persons who may have preceded them. And that can be a very discouraging factor because I too have faced some experiences where in certain organizations you do come with some fresh idea, and like Mr. Andrew said, there's a lot of reluctance at first. But then with his ideas and the slow incorporation of young versus old in terms of knowledge, it is a possibility. But it's also something that has to be changed from those who are the change makers in those organizations. They need to equally be receptive to young talent and young innovation. And until we don't get that change happening from the micro level in all industries, we will not see the change that we need to embrace. But I do commend young people for rising up, especially Mr. Andrew for taking this platform and sharing his ideas and innovation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, caller.
We have another caller line. Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, good evening to you, ma'am.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, caller. Go ahead, please.
Hi. What I want to find out is he a candidate in the upcoming election?
Okay, let me find out from you. Are you a candidate? Because I don't know you to be a candidate.
No, I'm not an official candidate in any political party at this moment, no.
Okay. We have a call. Good evening, NewsMaker Live. You're on the air.
Good evening,
Good evening to you, caller.
This is NYC President Yanika Shaba, and I would really like to say well done to Mr. Andrew for such a wonderful presentation and for literally bringing out the issues of young people and really how we would really want to be the change makers and really want to, basically give our input to the future of St. Lucia. So well done, Mr. Andrew.
Thank you.
And I'm watching.
So let me ask you, ma'am, before you go, what's up with the National Youth Council? Because we're not hearing too much of the NYC these days.
Okay, so the NYC, like Mr. Andrew said earlier on, the NYC came into a period when, because of some situation that occurred, that we really needed to rebrand and look at the way in which the NYC is being received by the general public. Because anytime we would be heading out, we would be asked about that particular situation. So we basically had to handle internal matters, internal affairs, and so that we could be able to drive the organization into a better direction. There was a lot of structural work that needed to be done, which we've been currently taking on. However, the NYC is working and we're having activities, etc. However, there's just a lot that needs to be done in terms of structure.
Finally, ma'am, what's a big area of concern for the National Youth Council right now that you as president would want to be addressed? If you had your way, what would be the main priority for young people?
The main priorities definitely would be tokenism. Young people basically are being brought to tables, would share their ideas, and it would not really be taken into consideration. So basically we would be giving ideas, stating our points, and then they would say, yes, it's accepted, but when you really look at it, it is just giving us a space on the table and not taking in our information. So while persons may believe that the NYC is not working, it's really a hassle and it's really a stress to basically push our ideas on those tables. But we're really pushing to have them heard so that we could represent the young people of this nation. Also, the crime and violence issue, especially in schools, these have been huge concerns to us. And it is not that we are not dealing with the situation, we are, but however, there are certain processes that need to be taken with key stakeholders before we get out to do whatever needs to be done. So we're basically putting things in place to handle, and like Mr. Joshua said earlier on, 2 weeks ago, a national consultation was done in terms of crime prevention among at-risk youth, and also we're looking at the plans coming from this action plan to take further steps on crime.
Okay, ma'am, thank you so much for calling the broadcast. All the best to you and the National Youth Council.
Thank you so very much.
Just heard there from the president of the NYC. Let's continue to take your calls. This is NewsMaker Live. Good evening. You are on the air.
Hi, Tim.
Good evening to you, Rick. How are you, sir?
In very good shape.
You're a youth? You're a youth? Go ahead.
Say that again?
Are you a youth? As far as your brain is concerned, right?
Well, those are words that don't have any place in my vocabulary.
Okay.
They are totally meaningless.
Go ahead, Rick.
Your guest, I don't get his name there.
Jeshuan Andrew.
Put his name back on the screen, man.
Jeshuan Andrew.
Put his name back there so I can.
Okay, Junel put it on, yeah.
Yeah. Tim, like you, I am interested in the NYC's National Youth Council. The National Youth Council's record sucks. I mean, every time we talk to, we interview them, and I've interviewed nearly every one of their presidents, and here and there, but the one thing they share is they're very articulate. But without being insulting or in any way discouraging to your guest, because I'm impressed with him for a number of reasons, I have to say that he talked like, fantastically, if you get my drift. For example, he seems to have it mixed up, the difference between a police officer fighting crime and welfare workers. Policemen are not recruited to be social workers. They're recruited to fight crime. And we are very undermanned, and every under thing regarding our police force. And the crime gets more and more atrocious. People are getting more and more used to living with crime, which is totally counterproductive. And I would have thought, I would have expected a nice-looking young man like that, and energetic, looking at everything else, would have been as if some ideas totally different from what we've been hearing the old heads talking about. And by the way, let's get used to this idea that youth does not make you a great worker or a talented worker. All you have on your side is youth. And as Oscar Wilde said, youth is wasted on the young. Youth is wasted on the young. When we get old, we start, oh, I wish I had done this or whatever. But we're not, I think we're misdirecting young people in that we figure that their age is a major factor. Let us say this young man, in fact, is going for elections, and he came to my house campaigning. I would ask him, what is his background? What work has he done? What is his track record? Where does he stand on the matter of crime? I heard him say, for example, what the young people want now is to have ministers of government, correct me if I'm wrong, sit with them on the block. There should be no block. There should be no block. We know what a block is. There should be no block. We should give those people proper places to get together, share ideas, clubs, government-sponsored, whatever it is, things that they can raise themselves. A functioning, for example, NYC, a functioning one, and the days when the NYC was founded and its reasons are no longer applicable, relevant to today. It's a totally different time, and you know that, Jim. you around when it was formed, and the life how we're living today. So I don't want for 1 minute to discourage you, Jason. A very articulate young man, a very presentable young man. But don't be fooled like the rest of those guys and use your age as a main factor. Because all of the politicians you have here now, most of whom we have no time for, came in young, with no experience of anything. And we are seeing the consequences as they get older and more decrepit. So it's not that they became decrepit because they're 60 and 70. They were decrepit when they came in. They were unqualified. They had nothing going for them. You never heard of them. And they go the usual routes of this social worker, But I'm not trying to discourage you at all. You have time on your side. That's the thing. You have time on your side. So don't take anything I said there as discouragement. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Your reaction?
Thanks for that.
Oh, we have another call. Good evening, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air. Hello, good evening.
Yes, I have a point that I would like to make to Mr. Andrew. I would like to thank him, first off, for speaking out, especially as it pertains to education. As a former educator, I have seen a lot of the injustices happening in our education system as it pertains to people. I would like to say to the National Youth Council that it is essential for them to look at the student councils and the student bodies and get the students involved, get them interested in democracy and making their appeals to higher bodies such as the Minister of Education and the Prime Minister. It is essential for us to stand up with them and lead them into a better tomorrow. Education has always been put on the back burner. Education has always been neglected. So it's essential that people like Mr. Andrew provide a perspective that is fundamental for the development of St. Lucia, especially when it looks at education that promotes the social, religious, and holistic development of our young people. So kudos to you, Mr. Andrew, for that perspective, and thank you very much for advocating, especially as it relates to education.
Thank you so much for calling. Some more of your calls once again for my guest, Mr. Jeshurun Andrew, former president of the National Youth Council, and is currently an agricultural extension officer. We have a call. Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you, caller.
Yes, I just want to give my kudos to Mr. Andrew, a young man who's been in youth development, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but since about 2013, 2012, thereabouts.
Yes, accurate.
Right. I've been watching you, and I've also participated in quite a few of your programs. I know you've been in and around the youth development, community development space for quite a while, and I want to commend you on the points you brought forward this evening. Very relevant, you articulated them very well, I must say. Also, I really love your tie. That's a very beautiful tie you're wearing, St. Lucian colors. I appreciate that too.
Thank you very much.
I also want to disagree with one of the callers who said that the NYC is no longer relevant in today's state. If the NYC was no longer relevant, why is it that we have so many young men involved in crime? Why is it that the perpetrators of these gruesome acts of violence are young people? If the NYC is not relevant today, then we wouldn't see so many young people being involved in crime and violence. We could argue on whether the NYC is truly fulfilling what it is supposed to do, which is advocate for the rights advocate for the rights of young people. But we cannot sit here and say that there is no need for the NYC. The NYC, one of the NYC's purposes is to hold the government on a leash and make sure that they are serving young people. So if you're telling me that that is no longer necessary in today's date, you're telling me that our state of youth development is perfect, and we could obviously see it's not. So I really wanted to bring that across, that what that other caller said, that is not true. The NYC is very much relevant today. What I think obtains is that our young leaders are afraid to step forward, are afraid to hold the politicians to account, and are afraid to speak out because we know the victimization, and let's not play like we don't know. We know the victimization that exists when a young person steps forward, and not even to mention if they dare to make the bold step and step forward into elective politics. We know the hell and damnation come upon young people. So let us not pretend like we don't know the challenges that young people face when it comes to advocating and some of the challenges that persons in the NYC, and I'm sure you experienced it because you were president at one point in time. Whenever you would make a statement, somebody would label you, oh, he's a labor, he's a flubber, that's why he's saying that. You know, these are some of the things that affect our young people while they are at service in the NYC. So we need to not only look at things from one perspective where it's just what they're not doing, but we also need to look at it full circle and see where some of their challenges are. But that's just what I wanted to say. Thank you and have a great night.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much for calling. Any reaction?
Yeah, well, Tim, I think when Rick called, he said that...
I think we've taken a call. Good evening, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, good night, Tim. Good night, Mr. Andrew.
Good evening to you,
I just want to say, Mr. Andrew, job well done tonight, so I'm very impressed. But I'm just curious, I'm very intrigued. And I just want to ask you, sir, what inspired you to be involved in youth development, and how has that journey itself shaped your leadership lifestyle?
Thank you so much. Okay, allow you to answer. Irrespective of whether we get calls or not, I'll ask you, allow you to answer this question.
Okay, well, my passion and my drive for youth and community development started from a very tender age, Tim. My mother actually worked as a community nurse in several communities throughout the island. I was a little boy at the time, and what she would do, any community she worked in, she would look for at least one family that she could help come out of whatever financial or economic situation that they were in, and assist with sending the children to school. And I was able from a tender age to see how just her little efforts would impact and change lives drastically, and it really encouraged me to allow me to realize that one life at a time, you can actually change somebody's entire future. And some of those young persons at the time, they have grown up and we have remained friends up to a day like today. And so, seeing that from a very tender age, I grew up into an adult who always appreciated that type of work. And I feel, so blessed to be able to go out and to help persons and to contribute to efforts of, youth and community development.
Is your mom still alive?
Yes, she is.
You have a call. Good evening, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you, caller.
I have a question for you. As a young person, and also agriculture officer, you said you were?
Yes.
What are some of the programs for young agriculture, and what would you suggest, or if you were in a position to create policies to encourage young people to go into agriculture? Because we know that prosperity is a big thing in developing nations. So what are the programs in place currently for young people in agriculture, and what are some of the measures that you would put in place to encourage more young people to enter agriculture?
Thank you so much.
Okay, Tim, I will really take this opportunity to ask every young person who is watching now, who is into agriculture, or maybe just remotely or slightly interested, just go on and do a quick Google search on vertical farming. I think it is the way forward for agriculture, for youth in agriculture. With your little backyard space, young people can actually make a living using the technologies available in vertical farming. If you do a quick YouTube search, you can find a lot of information, and that is what I have been encouraging a lot of the young people in the community to get into. And so I would just really love to use your platform at this time to encourage any young person who is watching to go out there and do some research and see how you can get involved in vertical agriculture.
Good evening, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, I would like to ask Mr. Andrew this one question. So what do you believe is one area that we lack when it comes to youth advocacy or youth development on a whole in St. Lucia?
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that question. I think one of the things we can do as it pertains to, I'll use a random example, employment. I think we have many young persons who are or have the skills. They can work if they get employed, but the issue is the access. So at an interview, many young persons struggle. They fail to be able to sell themselves as somebody who can work and who can deliver. And so I think I myself, I have done programs in the past. It was called Interview Ready, and it seek to educate young persons how to sell themselves at an interview, what they should do, the do's, the don'ts. And I think that's something that's very, very important, and it's lacking. Maybe it can be done in the schools or through community groups and clubs, but you have young persons who are talented, who can do the work, who have the passions, but they're just not able to sell themselves at that level.
Good. Okay, we lost that call, but continue to call us once again for my guest, Mr. Jeshuan Andrew, who is a former president of the National Youth Council, and he's an agricultural extension officer. What are we seeing on screen there?
So
right
I see on screen that you would have picked up the vertical farming. So Tim, as you can see, with 3 to 4 square foot of space, you can actually have one of these technologies, one vertical tower, and you can produce so much food compared to if you had to use your traditional beds and spread it out on the ground, Tim. And so with a little bit of backyard space, the average young person can use this technology and actually earn a living, $3,000 to $4,000 a month with very, very little space, and be an entrepreneur.
I would like to thank my producer for taking the initiative to provide us with this video instantaneously. Good afternoon. Sorry. Good evening. This is NewsMaker Live. You're on the air.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you, caller.
Good evening, Mr. Andrew.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Earlier, Mr. Andrew had begun speaking about the suicide awareness campaign that he had been having. But I also wanted to know, is there any specific community development initiative that you believe has had a lasting impact?
Thank you so much for calling, ma'am.
Yeah, so I was speaking about the suicide awareness campaign earlier. I don't think I was able to complete what was being said. But the campaign actually seek to basically equip the young persons who participated with the know-how. So you have a pair who seems to be suicidal. What are the signs? What to look for? How you, as a young person in the community, can deal with it when it gets to the level where it's serious. Who do you need to call? How do you need to address the situation? So it equipped the young persons with peer-to-peer knowledge of how to, amongst themselves, deal with the suicide awareness. And I think coming out of that program, we have been able to pinpoint and help so many young persons in the community who are going through difficult times. And it's a campaign that I would always encourage any youth organization to continue pushing, to educate the young persons and to have them, equipped in that field.
Good evening. Thanks for holding on. NewsMaker Live. You're on the air.
Hi, good evening to you.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Regarding vertical farming, can you provide at least 2 examples of where he was able to implement this? Because I'm getting the feeling that there's a lot of talk, but I'm looking for the actual action, the accomplishment, and I'm failing to see this. Right? And as it relates to education, I am still lost as to what he is trying to speak to as it relates to education reform. I've heard nothing about the soft skills, leadership, team building, etc. So I think it's a lot of talk. I'm looking for action, and I'm still waiting to see this thing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for that question, caller. I think what I was saying earlier is based on my research. Vertical farming is what I am trying to encourage young persons to go into at this time. It is something that I have been looking into in recent times, and any young person I come across who is interested in agriculture, I try to push them in the direction of vertical farming, to do the research and to implement it. I myself, I am a farmer, and I am looking to try to get a few of those towers to come in to try it out for myself. But it is me encouraging young persons to do the research as a way out.
We have a call. Good evening to you. NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, caller. Good evening to you, caller.
Yes, good evening. Should I speak?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
First of all, wonderful program, because the...
Hello?
Yes?
Yes, go ahead. I'm listening, caller.
Okay, I'm speaking, but I'm hearing like somebody speaking at the same time, so I'm not...
Well, maybe they have some interference with your line. I don't know. But continue. Try to ignore it.
All right. Okay, so I was just saying, wonderful program, because the youth is the future. But I wanted to raise interest in a particular venture. That is, when you look at where the whole world is going, that is, the world is shifting more into what they call the electric cars, electric vehicles. But most of our mechanics are more inclined to the non-electric vehicles. I see that an opportunity for youth, a good employment opportunity. If the youth can, if the government and other NGOs can organize training for youth in how to fix these electric cars and take the lead on that, so that as the world moves closer and closer to going almost fully electric cars, at least then Lucia could have youth that are trained how to fix those things. And maybe if we train our youth enough and enough young people that can do both auto mechanics and also IT, then it presents an opportunity for us now to even send our youth to other islands to fix those cars, because these cars are the way forward, and our youth are already inertly inclined to IT and stuff like that. So I wanted to raise interest in that, hoping that somebody take on the mandate and push it. The other concern I have is the young men. I'm seeing so many young men sitting by the roadside. You know, we need to do something as a nation together. The churches, the government, the NGOs. Too many young men just sitting by the roadside on the mornings when you go to work. We have to discuss how can we find an opportunity to get them engaged in occupation. Are there other economic opportunities out there that we can get them involved in? I heard Mr. Andrew mention vertical gardening. That's a brilliant, good idea. But what else can be done? Because they would need something that is almost as economical as selling marijuana. So they need something that else they can do that would distract them or avert them from going the track of selling things that is illegal. So we need to just find a platform, or if someone that can come up with ideas of what we can get these young men involved in. Statistically, a lot of the schools are saying most of the dropouts at secondary school is young men. You have more boys dropping out of school than girls at secondary level. At higher education university, you have a lot more young ladies going out there than young men. Something's happening to our male populace, and we need to take insight and start to strategize for it now, so it can affect a better future for them, for the male populace. So I want to raise these ideas, and thank you for a wonderful program. God bless you all.
Right, sir. Thank you so much for calling the broadcast. We have another caller line. Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live. You're on the air.
Hello, good evening, Tim.
Good evening to you, ma'am.
Yes, viewing your program, just a quick follow-up from Rick's comments. I would really very much like to echo the sentiments expressed by Rick Wayne, which I believe may have gone over the head of a few persons. I also want to echo particularly what Rick had to say insofar as this young man appears to be articulate. When I listened to him, question to you, Tim, was Ernest Hiller a former NYC president?
I don't know if he was a former president, but I think he was on the executive of the National Youth Council.
Right.
I don't think he was president.
We have a lot of these persons who have come out of the NYC but have turned out to be disappointments.
and they come across as very smooth talkers. I don't wish to discourage the young man, pretty much as Rick has alluded and has indicated, but what I am asking your viewers is that we take a careful look at those persons who are presenting themselves. And indeed, a caller asked the question as to whether this young man is a political candidate, and he says not as yet. The question we would need to find out is whether he is a potential candidate. Has he applied to be a candidate? And if that is the case, he needs to just come up front and say that this is the angle from which he is presenting tonight. So it gives all of us a better appreciation for the context from which he comes. So just come straight out and say what the objective is. With that being satisfied, and Mr. Andrew can confirm that he is indeed has applied to be a candidate in the upcoming elections, we can look at him with clear lens. Right? So a lot of the conversation which is happening now and the call which was placed, vertical farming, what is your track record in the career that you currently hold as a public servant? What has been your achievements in that area? If you are presenting yourself as a potential candidate, which I believe you are, you should be very transparent with your audience. We don't want to see other Ernest Hillers. And the NYC, yes, they have done some good work, but they've been very silent on a lot of the issues that are plaguing our young people. Crime, unemployment, these issues, we had nothing from the NYC. And yes, do the young people deserve a seat at the table? Sorry, yes, they do. But it must be earned. So as much as I appreciate
hold on,
contributions
because I invited the gentleman on the broadcast in his capacity as the former president of the National Youth Council, and this is not the first time that I have invited him as well. But I take objection to you saying that you know, to have a seat at the table as young people, that this must be earned. I mean, what do you really mean by that? Do we say the same thing? Hold on. Do we say the same thing for the adults? Because it has seemed that senior citizens and adults feel they are privileged and they are entitled and they have been around long enough, and therefore they have earned the right. Because of that, the age, by dint of the age, they have earned the right automatically to have a seat at the table. So I don't think that's fair.
So let us apply it across the spectrum. It is a fair question to put irrespective. Whether you're middle age, whether you're senior, the question is you don't just come and present because of age. And that is the point that Rick was making.
Okay,
age is not a qualifying factor.
Okay, thank you so much. What's you? We have another call. Good evening to you, NewsMaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, good night. Good night, team. Good night.
Good evening to you, caller.
Andrew. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes. Question to you, Mr. Andrew. So far, hearing you throughout the night, you've spoken highly of initiatives and activities. And I think it's evident that persons who may be watching would like to know just a track record of your community development. What activities or what initiatives have you done yourself in your community?
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think over the years I've been very involved in community team. My track record speaks for itself. I mean, young persons in and around St. Lucia are aware of a lot of the work that I have done in sports, whether it be track and field, whether it be basketball, whether it be football, whether it be cricket, long jump, field events. I've done a lot of community programs in all of those areas. I have also done several training programs for young persons in various aspects, whether it be public speaking, whether it be debate competitions, like I mentioned earlier, the interview ready, suicide awareness. I had the inter-preschool sports. I would always participate in community events, so I think for the past 10 years, I have ensured that every year I would have a hamper drive for Christmas, reaching out to the less fortunate in the community. I would have also been involved in back-to-school initiatives for the past few years. There's a haircuts and hairstyles activity that I do for back to school, as well as a back to school drive where I provide assistance to less fortunate families who need, the basic essentials, bags, stationery, notebooks, and that sort of thing. I would have also been involved in several groups and organizations nationally and at the community level. I would have represented St. Lucia overseas at several youth development forums, etc. And there are so many other initiatives that I would have been involved in over the years, Tim, that it would take me a while to be able to run through each one and to carefully document the impact and what I've been involved in.
Final comments from you, sir?
Yeah, so Tim, I really want to encourage the young people out here on live on your program who is viewing tonight, to continue striving for whatever it is you want to achieve. We've seen what Julian Alfred has been able to do, and that should really indicate to us that as young people we have what it takes to achieve once we put our mind to it and we're focused that we can get there, we can achieve it, and to not let anybody along the way sidetrack us or to tell us that we're not good enough or we're not able to. Let us always put our best foot forward when we get into the spaces, ensure that we deliver and we do what we are supposed to do so that we set a new precedence as it pertains to young people, young leaders, our capabilities, our abilities, what we can do, and let us continue contributing to positive change in our country.
Former President of the National Youth Council, Mr. Sheshuan Andrew, thank you so much for being my guest on this evening's NewsMaker Live. And to you, thank you so much for watching the broadcast and contributing via your calls. If it's Wednesday, it's NewsMaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked.
St. Lucia had more gold medals than Jamaica did this year. Did you know that? St. Lucia, they got like one athlete.
No, they did not.
And I am St. Lucian. You know that. My grandfather's from St. Lucia.
Okay, what part of St. Lucia is he from?
I don't know. He has a lot of property in St. Lucia.
Okay, and what if you're so St. Lucian, what's the capital of St. Lucia?
It doesn't matter what it is. We have a gold medal, you don't. So it could be whatever it wants. Julian Alfred, that's the capital.
And that's the broadcast. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Timothy Poleon saying good night and see you next time.
I, Philip Joseph here.
I would like to be judged as being the Prime Minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
Came into government that we had a manifesto and a vision and mission that had been approved by my party, by the highest body.
Basel 11 has not been in existence. 50 was...
Giant getting bazooka. You spraying big on to knock out mosquitoes.
I have never had a joint account with anybody in my life. Not my ex-wife, not my children, nobody. And I will refer that to the privileges committee.
What about the culture of people getting to office and not being effective?
What people become Prime Minister of St. Lucia have been the most ready.
Let's do it this Wednesday, because if it's Wednesday, it's NewsMaker Live.